Everyone says the law draws a clean line between right and wrong. What we learned the hard way is that life rarely does. Today's story is about Jack Rowan, where a single scar became the proof of who he really was. Out in Dead Man's Gulch, it all began with one small choice: staying seated when he should have walked away. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I know exactly what stays with me from that night in Dead Man's Gulch: the sound of steel finding flesh. Sharp. Certain. Like the woman holding the blade knew where a man hides his soul and the cleanest way to sever it. You hear a sound like that once it never leaves you. There are times in a man's life when every notion of right and wrong he's ever leaned on gets swept aside like cold ashes. That December night in '92 was one of them for me. I was working on my third whiskey in that cursed saloon, watching snow stack up against windows that hadn't been washed since Lincoln walked the earth. Then she came through the door. May Calder. I'd seen plenty of women before: saloon girls, preachers' daughters, even a senator's wife once. But her, hell. She didn't belong in the same category. She was the kind of woman who made a man forget his own name and remember exactly why God gave him hands. Trouble like that always charges a fee, and that night the bill was coming due. Maybe I should have walked away. Tipped my hat, slipped out the door like a man with sense. You can decide for yourself if you'd have done any better. The wind was screaming through the gulch, angry and wild, like it had something to settle. I was worn down to the bone after 3 days in the saddle. All I wanted was a warm drink and a quiet corner to let my thoughts bleed out. But the second that door swung open and she stepped inside, winter on her shoulders, fire in her eyes, I knew peace was off the table. She ordered whiskey. Her voice was smooth, soft, and edged with iron. Tom Hollis stood behind the bar, been pouring drinks since before the war, and his hands shook as he filled the glass. Tom had watched plenty of bad news walk through that door, but I'd never seen him shake like that. That should have warned me. "Ma'am," I said, touching the brim of my hat. Polite, careful, hoping to be smart. She turned then, green eyes slicing through the smoke like a blade through silk. "Stranger," she said. One word. But she said it like she was sampling something dangerous. That's when I heard the horses, hooves pounding hard fast, closing the distance. I've got a sense for trouble comes from too many years living on the wrong side of the law. Every instinct I had was shouting at me to stand up, move on, disappear. But I stayed seated. Maybe it was the whiskey. Maybe the way the lamplight caught her dress. Or maybe it was what I saw when she glanced towards the window. Not fear. Something colder. Something final. Like a woman who'd already made her peace with dying young. "They're coming," someone yelled from outside, and the saloon exploded into motion. Men threw themselves behind tables. Bottles shattered. Chairs shrieked across the floorboards. She didn't move. Not an inch. Calm as a church morning. One hand stayed flat on the bar. The other rested easy on the grip of a knife I hadn't noticed until then. That's when the girl came into view. 15, maybe 16. Fear all over her face, though she fought hard to keep it buried. She hugged a burlap sack tight to her chest like it was her last breath. She ran straight to May Calder, and that's how I learned the woman's name when the girl cried it out. And right there, something inside me shifted, the way May dropped to one knee, drew the girl in close, murmured something gentle, protective. That wasn't the gesture of a cold-blooded thief. That was a woman shielding someone she loved. "What's in the sack?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Gold. From a bank," the girl whispered. She took it so they wouldn't. And there it was, the crossroads every man hits sooner or later, the moment you decide who you really are. Here stood this woman. Beautiful. Deadly. breaking the law to save a girl who didn't even share her blood. And there stood me Jack Rowan, dragging my own past behind me, sins heavy as saddlebags. The Barrett riders were closing in. 5 men. Maybe 6. Through the iced-over window I saw torchlight slicing the storm apart, yellow eyes in the white wolves on the hunt. "Hide us," May said. Her voice carried something new, not pleading, something rarer. "Hope. Just one night," she said. That's all. Tom Hollis had a cellar, trapdoor behind the bar leading down to where he stashed his finest bottles and his darkest secrets. We dropped through it just as the first shot cracked the air. Down below, we crouched in the dark, listening to boots pound the floor overhead. That's when my thoughts caught up with me. I could have sold them out. Bought my freedom by handing over the woman and the gold. Hell, there might have even been a bounty attached. But watching May hold that girl, seeing how she guarded someone smaller, weaker, it reminded me of something I'd buried a long time ago. Why men fight at all. "Why'd you take it?" I asked her. My voice stayed low in the dark. She met my eyes, green and steady, and for a heartbeat the steel around her fell away. "To buy her a life," she said, nodding toward the girl, Ellie Knox. That wasn't the kind of story meant to soften a man. I'd heard plenty of excuses in my years. Men dressing evil up in pretty words. But this rang different. This rang true. The trapdoor above us shook. Fists slammed against it. Voices snarled closer. The voices were closing in. I thumbed the cylinder on my revolver, feeling the comfort of cold steel settle into my palm. "What were you before all this?" I asked May Calder. "Alive," she said. "Same as you. Damn if she wasn't right. The first man who burst through that trapdoor never even saw it coming. I fired once. Clean. He dropped like a sack of grain. The second. That was where May earned something permanent from me. Fast as a strike from a rattler. Steady as a surgeon's hand. Her blade slid into the soft place beneath his ribs. He went down, choking, bleeding, but still breathing. "Your mess," I told her. She smiled. Knife red in her grip. Glad to help. Then it was all motion. We tore out of that cellar like devils clawing free of hell. May moved like violence was written into her bones, smooth, ruthless, exact. Ellie Knox stayed tight behind us. I learned later she had more nerve than men, twice her size. She clutched that sack like it was sacred. The saloon had come apart. Tables flipped. Glass littered the floor like broken stars. We pushed for the loft, climbing those narrow steps, buying seconds where we could. That's when the voice came. "May Calder, we know you're up there." It carried authority, the kind that expects obedience. That was Cole Barrett. May only tightened her grip on the knife, gave a slow shake of her head. "Not tonight," she whispered. What followed was war. I've been in gunfights before, rustlers, road agents, crooked lawmen, judges who sold justice by the pound. But fighting beside that woman made every shot mean something. Every pull of the trigger felt personal. We moved like we'd trained together all our lives. May with her blade. Me with my gun. Ellie crouched low, holding our future close to her chest. When the smoke thinned, the last man fell. We were still standing. But standing doesn't mean safe. Dawn crept in as we slipped through a loose board and dropped into the snow. Cold never felt so clean. The storm was breaking. The gulch lay quiet but for our breathing and boots crunching white. We reached the tree line before May stopped. She turned to me, those green eyes steady as ever. "We keep the gold," she said. "No question in it. Just fact." I looked at her, then at Ellie, then at the sack that had already bought so much blood. For her. That was the moment I knew I'd chosen right, not because the gold was clean, not because the law would agree, but because some choices don't answer to the law at all. Stealing is still stealing, no matter how gentle the hands or righteous the reason. But there are times when a man has to decide whether he'll answer to the law or to his conscience. And more often than folks like to admit, those two don't shake hands. We split at the edge of town. May Calder and Ellie Knox turned north. I headed south, same as always. Before she left, May pressed something into my palm, a photograph. Her and the girl, caught in a moment before the world turned hard, both of them smiling, like tomorrow was something you could count on. "So you remember," she said. "I still carry that picture, corners frayed, faces worn thin, but it's there. Still reminding me there was one night when I chose to be better than the man I'd been. One night I saw a woman in trouble and decided to be the man she needed, not the man I was used to being." Stories like this don't wrap up neat. They never do. May and the girl vanished into the Montana territory, like breath in cold air. I never saw them again. Every now and then, rumors drifted my way. Some said they crossed into Canada. Others swore they settled quiet somewhere, took new names, wiped the slate clean. Me, I went back to the road. Back to dust and miles. Back to living between right and wrong. But I kept the photograph, and I kept the feeling of standing for something. Something bigger than myself. A man's life isn't measured by the gold he takes or the blood he leaves behind. It's measured in the moments he stands firm, when he chooses the hard path over the easy one. When he looks darkness in the eye and says, "Not today." That night in Dead Man's Gulch taught me something I didn't know I was missing, that even a man who spent his life on the wrong side of the law can end up on the right side of a fight if the cause is worth bleeding for. Was May Calder a thief? Damn right she was. Was what she did wrong? By the book, sure was. But sometimes the book falls short. Sometimes a man has to write his own rules, draw his own line, and hold it when everything comes apart. That gold bought Ellie Knox a chance at a life. And that fight bought me something I didn't know I'd lost. The certainty that when it mattered, when the choice stood clear, I could still be a man worth knowing. The scar on my shoulder reminds me every morning. The photograph in my pocket reminds me why some battles earn their scars. So tell me, was I a fool to risk my life for a woman I'd just met and a girl who wasn't mine to save? Or was that the first smart decision I'd made in years? Maybe the answer isn't the point. Maybe what matters is that when life put the question to me, I didn't hesitate. Some men die without ever learning who they are. That night in Dead Man's Gulch, I learned. And I'll be damned if I didn't like the man I found. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for being here and letting this story live within your heart. If it moved you, I hope you'll walk beside us through more journeys of the Wild West stories, filled with truth, endurance, and grace. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and stay close. Together, we'll keep riding across these wide-open lands of memory and hope. Thank you. Aviso legal barra disclaimer. Our narratives bring inspiration from the past, recreated with fictional and dramatized interpretations for entertainment purposes only. AI tools serve as creative support, but the storytelling, editing, and emotional refinement are handled by our team to guarantee authenticity. We comply with content policies for AI use, avoiding impersonations, identity fabrication, or historically misleading images. All visual and audio content is legally sourced. Redistribution or modification requires prior written approval. Thank you for honoring creativity, collaboration, and storytelling done with heart.